Perfect. Thank you so much, guys, for being here in my talk. I know that there are awesome talks in parallel, and you guys chose it to stay in mind. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Uh, just a normal start. My name is Elias Nogueira. I work as a senior principal software engineer. I'm from Brazil, but I live in the Netherlands. I'm doing some stuff for the Java community as a Java magazine editor in the here in the Netherlands. As well, I'm a Java champion in our quiz for Java. And if you guys want to learn about testing, because this is my main topic for every time, this is my main job actually, you guys can follow me in any tech social network. Today, we will talk about 5 different tools to modernize your testing structure. Probably you guys are using some of those tools, but I show you different perspective of using those tools or features that you guys can use to speed up. Okay, I will spend more or less 5 to 6 minutes per tool. It will be a little bit faster than usual in a talk. I could talk about each tool for 45 minutes for sure, but I will show you the most interesting features and how you can use that. I will show some slides and live code and how I will do it. I will show the slides, I will explain something. The slide, you see in the slides some code snippet, but I will probably just talk about a little bit. You guys don't need to pay attention in the code in that part because I will do live coding during the session. And don't hesitate to send any questions in the chat because when I finish the first two and the other ones, I will take a look in the chat and see if you guys have some questions or not. Cool. So starting with the first one, which is AssertJ. AssertJ is assertion library. It has a lot of stars on GitHub. And one thing that all the time I'm saying to everyone, if you like a tool on GitHub, an open source tool, go there, show your appreciation, giving a star to that tool. So the guys who contribute to open source really like to see that the guys are appreciating and adding in star in the project, so they can say, okay, those guys are really liking the project, so let's like even continue doing more good stuff. And the Assert library. Assert library is a library which will be an extension of the unit testing libraries that provides only assertion methods. And by assertion methods, you can have a lot of different ones. Normally, if you use TestNG or JUnit, you have few assertions: assert equals, assert true, assert false, assert not equals, and basically it stops there. When you use a proper library to assert everything you need in your tests, you can assert different objects. You can assert atomic types, primitive types, temporal objects. You can assert any kind of collections. So it will extend a lot. So instead of creating more code in your test, you are creating less code, sending the responsibility of those assertions to a proper library. And AssertJ has, of course, a lot of methods for it, but it has 3 super cool features: recursive comparison, soft assertions, and custom assertions, where you can create your own assertion on top of AssertJ. I will talk about those 3 in a row, and I will show you the code of those 3 different ones, okay? The first one is basically the recursive comparison. And I know there's a lot of code here, but I just explain more or less what it does, and I will do a live coding about it. The problem is, if you have 2 objects that are similar, but they are different classes, and it happens a lot. Sometimes I have my entity and my DTO or any other model object. If I try to do is equal or any equals comparison, it will fail because the equals method compares reference in the objects, not the value of the objects. And we are trying to do test where we have the objects with different fields, with different values. We need to see the values inside the fields, not the reference about those objects. That's why we have a method on AssertJ called using recursive comparison. And AssertJ, we know, okay, it's not the equals between the 2 classes, but AssertJ will go field by field and will compare the values of those fields. And of course, I can ignore some fields, I can do a lot of things, but this will remove a lot of code from your tests. Second good feature, it's called soft assertions. What it does? Normally, we have something called the normal assertions, which is known by hard assertions. Every time if you have 3 assertions, like normal ones, and it fails in the first one, the whole test execution will stop, prevent you to go further. But if you use soft assertions, we will more or less wrap it in a soft assertion. So all the assertions inside it will run. If it fails, it will get information that it failed, and we'll run the other ones until we have the last one. And after that, the full result of the assertions will be shown. So you can save a lot of time when we have to validate an object and you need to fix some data there. And of course, it speeds up a little bit the whole testing development process. The last cool feature is that you can create your own validation. So if you see in the last 2 lines in the slide, you can see that I'm doing an assertion with name has valid installments and has valid amount. So I have actually written my own validation, and it can be like even more clear for everyone that will develop the test or try to read the test. And of course, we send the responsibility for that. Every time you have the same validation, you can send the responsibility to a class. So if you need to change any rule or anything like that, you change in the class, it propagates to all your tests. Cool, but normally talk is cheap. So let me show you some code, some examples, and I will run it. So the first thing is the assertions about hard and soft assertions. So I have a project here that I will go through this one. I already have everything set here. Just to show you, let me comment. So I have 2 objects here. It's simulation object, and this simulation object, I'm using 2 objects, one simulation DTO, so my entity and my DTO, and you see that all the attributes are the same: name, CPF, email, amount, installments, insurance. And I'm building this using a builder pattern. And I need to test if the values are the same. Normally, what we would do for in the first time, assert that simulation1 is equal to simulation2. But if I do this, if I run this, like I said before, it compares the 2 classes. It's not comparing the fields. So I can see that even though everything is in the data perspective is equal, it fails because it's the reference. And what you guys will do to overcome this situation, you guys will do field by field. So simulation1 dot get name, it's equal to simulation2 dot get name, and you guys would do for example, duplicate, get email, for example, and get email for both. And you guys will do this constantly for all the fields. So you guys will end up, at least for this one, with 5 different ones. This will work for sure. So I'm comparing both. It runs perfectly. But instead of starting duplicating, doing a lot of things like this, you guys can easily using this use recursive comparisons. So AssertJ will know, okay, I need to look at the fields, get the value, and start comparing this first simulation versus the second simulation. And if I do this and run, it runs, but I don't know if it's doing the correct thing or not. So what I will do, I will just change the email. I will put elias@gmail.com, and I know that it will fail at Elias using this recursive comparison, not the other fields. So when I run, it's showing, okay, there's an assertion error between the 2 objects. They are being compared recursively, and actually the field, the property is the email one, and the actual value is John, and the expected one is Elias. Perfect. I know exactly what is failing here, and that is the only issue. So it's a really, really, really good feature from AssertJ to start removing a lot of code when we compare different fields from objects, okay? From objects that are similar, of course. And this recursive comparison, I can ignore fields if I want. I just need to send the name of the field, for example, amount, and it will ignore the amount field. It's super good when we have different objects that the second object, the response body, has a lot of dates and things that we don't need to validate. Cool. This is the first feature. Let's go to the second feature, which is the soft assertions. So soft assertions, where I have it, I don't have it here, so I will write my own. So let's say I have only one object. Let's remove this. And when I do let me get back to that one with two different ones. Yeah. And I will add one more validation for CPF. Perfect. Here, I'm trying to compare those two objects, field by field, line by line, with the assertion. And let's say I will change the name of the second one to Elias, and I will run it. Of course, it will fail in the first one because Elias is different from John in those two objects. But it stopped it here in the first validation. I have more two validations to go. How I can overcome this problem as well, if I don't need to validate all those fields using the recursive comparison. And by the way, if I change here to John, which is the correct one, but the email is different, and I run it again, of course, I will have a problem in the email. And I need to do this process all the time. Fix, run, fix, run, fix, run. It's endless process and time-consuming process as well. So what I can do, I can use soft assertions, assert softly. So normally I name it softly, and I use this softly, and I use this to softly dot assert that, and actually I can have exactly the same thing, softly assert that email, and softly dot assert that, the same thing, simulation one, and I can just copy paste here the CPF. That's fine. And I can have the same thing, but inside this soft assertion. So let's say if everything is wrong, the name, the CPF, I will add one extra 5, and I will run it. Instead of stopping the first issue, what AssertJ will do, let me just put this in the top. I cannot put in the top, now I can. So at the end of the test, it will show, in the failure, sorry. Okay, I have 3 multiple failures. The first one, it's, I will, of course, if I click, I go directly to the first. And the expected is Elias, but was John. The second failure, expected is Elias at Gmail, but was John at Gmail. And the last one, expected this, but it was that. And of course, if I click, I can go directly to the piece of code. And if I would like to, I can add something called as with a description. So name is not equals. So instead of going and clicking in niche exception stack trace, I can see at some point that name is not equal. So it's easier to understand which part of the code I'm trying to see. This is really good. And from my perspective, you guys, when you guys cannot use the recursive comparison, you guys must use these soft assertions because this will save a lot of your time. Okay. The last one that I would like to show is the custom soft assertions. And this I will show a full example. You don't write any code, but the custom soft assertions. If I try to see, let me see soft assert. Let me get the first one. I will write one piece of code. So I can, let me remove this. I can use a custom class. So there it's called let me get back to that piece of code here. And here, I call it simulation assertion. So if I go to my main code and I write simulation assertion, assert dot assert that simulation one dot has valid installments. So, but what is the valid installments or not valid installments? So what I did here, I'm extending a specific class from AssertJ that is responsible for assertions internally, and I can do this as well. I'm just doing some common things I need to do for a custom assertion, and what I added here has valid installments, and I'm verifying if it's not null, and actually my rule for it should be higher than 2 and equal or less or equal than 48. So if I have something that is not in this, I will fail it with this message. And I can have custom, instead of testing everything with the same values or with the same greater than or less than, I can just create a soft assertion for that, a custom assertion for that. And in the simulation one, if I add installments 50 and I try to run it, it will fail because it shouldn't have the value installment. So installments must be equal or greater than 2 or less than equal or less than 48. So I can even like creating better assertions than doing this. Assert that simulation one dot is or is equal to, for example, 48 or something that I need, or is greater than, so I need to get, sorry, the simulation one dot get installments, and now or is equal to, or is greater than 2, for example, but it still needs to test 48 or do the edge cases. So instead of adding a lot of code, I have a custom one here. Cool. I will check right now if you guys have some questions. Let me see. Yeah, you guys have some questions because I will jump to the next one, what I'm seeing here. So JUnit also have the corresponding equals method, which compares the fields for equality. Yes, but normally when we do these equals on details, we can use any library to implement it, or records will implement it for sure. But sometimes it's not in all the fields, right? In some most important reference, you need to compare. And that's why normally when we do dot equals, it's not the correct way to verify both different objects. But yeah, that's it. If you you can ask more questions if you want, but this is my current answer. And of course, we could just only have records just to make sure it's working. Second one, normally they should have equals. Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, exactly. So, and the last one, how about the unequal fields and use recursive comparison? Using object holds a subset of fields. Yeah, you can ignore. You have those different fields. It will try to find, AssertJ will try to find exactly the same fields. If you have extra fields, it will be ignored, or you can actually ignore it by default, like saying, okay, this date at or created at or something will be removed for this comparison. Otherwise, AssertJ will throw you, okay, there's an extra field on this second object that I need to validate. If you guys have more questions, please put in the chat. Cool. So the second part. And by the way, you guys will access those slides and everything later. So I have the examples for everything that I'm showing to you to the code. Rest assured, this I will show the whole concept only without like creating code. But rest assured, what it is, it's actually a powerful DSL, a powerful library to test APIs using Java Kotlin. And to see how awesome this tool is, Quarkus that you guys might know, use assertJ as a testing library by default. So this tool is awesome, but you don't need to use a Quarkus to use assertJ. Of course, you can use only assertJ library itself, and you guys can create any API tests using that. And it's good because you can use in one way that is super simple. It uses the 3 BDD keywords given when then to give you the precondition, the action, and the expected results. And assertJ is super good on it. And you can have multiple tests using assertJ, creating your objects as a payload to send a request. You guys can use the keywords given when then and all the actions, requests, and everything, but it won't scale when you guys are using professionally and when you guys have like a lot of microservices that you guys might have. So how we can overcome this problem? We can use actually a good architecture and some design patterns to decrease the maintenance, and we can use as well the OpenAPI generator to generate the client code for assertJ tests instead of generating for Spring, for some mobile clients, for a lot of different things that we normally do using the OpenAPI generator, using the OpenAPI specs. We can set it to generate assertJ code. And of course, it's good to create a service layer for this. And how we can use it, that's now I will open the modern testing tools. No, it's here. And I will open the project, the REST assertJ. Nice. So here, what I do have, I will just show the full structure of what will be good to use. I do have in my POM XML, what is my POM XML? 2 things that I need. One, I'm downloading the OpenAPI spec. It's here, credit YAML in some GitHub project. Just a silly one, I'm downloading the spec. I could clone it from a project. I could get it from the same path I'm using the project, etc. But I'm doing this download. And after that, I'm using the OpenAPI generator to generate the client code for me. And it's during the goal generation, during the phase generated source. And I'm doing some configurations that OpenAPI generator requires, invoker packer, API package, model, generator name. And I'm giving here one option. So create this using the library assertJ, which is a test library, which is super interesting. And as a serialization library, use Jackson, because I want to use Jackson this one. And how it will happen? During the generated source phase, my code, my .xml, will download the spec and will generate the client code. So let's see this in action. I will actually remove my target folder. I could use a clean as well, but yeah, it doesn't matter. And I will run here mvn, let's clean compile. So I'm generating the source through compile, and you can see that I have failures because I was creating some classes here, right? So I need to just do one thing. I need to remove my change that I did before. Rollback. Cool. Now we'll have it. And I do it again. And we'll compile my project without an issue. No, with an issue, Jesus. Simulation. I don't need to have the simulation. All the time that I give the talk, there's one issue, right? So remove this. Cool. Because I don't need that. Again. And success. And I will see here that there's a lot of writing things, and writing like Java classes. It's the OpenAPI spec generating things for me. And if I take a look at the target, generated source, OpenAPI, and I can see here on the main folder, I can see here the API, and the API being generated based on my OpenAPI spec. So I have here 2 endpoints, restriction and simulation, and I can see the code generated. It's a little bit different for normal. So I can see here the supplier and request spec builder and something different that is specifically from Rest Assured. So of course we need to learn a little bit more about Rest Assured, but it's generating actually everything. If I scroll down here for the get operation, it's getting the full path from our OpenAPI spec. I know that it's a get. It knows that I will run it, and one of the response will be will have this model message 1. So it's already generated the message 1. You're adding this in the code. So the whole basic structure of a client OpenAPI generator is generating for me using Rest Assured. And what would be the code? So there's 2 tricks. First one, I need, let me show him the test first. The test will be super simple. Instead of using the given when then, I can call a service. I will show the service. I can use a specific method, query CPF, or post that object or create that object. I will pass the payload, and I can, after that, just assert. Instead of using given from Rest Assured, given, I have, for example, parent, and this parent is CPF, and the CPF has this value. Oops, here. And dot when, dot get, and I need to place the full path. I won't continue, but I'm just showing you this is technical normal Rest Assured code. And now with this client generation, I can just create an abstraction on top of it and make it more understandable and easier to do any test. And the 2 tricks, the first one, I must have, I will have 2 different classes. Normally, you can guys have only 1. But when I do this, we can have the client just creating a better name from the methods that is generated by OpenAPI. So by the OpenAPI, I have this get restriction version 1. So instead of this, I'm using like query CPF and returning the whole object. And my service layer, of course, in the service layer, you will chain a lot of different requests and do a lot of different stuff. Here, I'm doing only 1. But here I use the correct object. For example, every time that I query this and this has a restriction, I'm saying, okay, the stats code will be that, and extract the response body and do the automatic object mapper to this message version 1 for me. And we will do it magically. So just creating few abstractions actually to a client and a service, and auto-generating the code, I can write tests that will be really understood by anyone, and it will easy by test creating API tests. And I'm showing you this because I have 13 teams using this, and this is the best approach so far. We could go faster and with less maintenance for any API tests. So this is awesome. I know that it's this super big, but I'm showing you a super cool feature using Rest Assured with OpenAPI specs. Okay. Let me see if I have any questions. No questions so far, but you guys can throw in the chat, and I will jump into the next one. So Awaitility, this is a super good one. And this is a DSL to deal with asynchronous systems and asynchronous calls. So, for example, normally you guys need to do API tests, and you guys have a synchronous system like Kafka, Redis, and any other in order to complete some request. And in the test perspective, you won't test Redis or Kafka, of course, but when you emit some events, you need to make sure, okay, this event that I emit that is not instant, going instantly to any endpoint or the database will be there at some point. because we need to validate in a large scale, not a normal scale that we use application this. So with Awaitility, we can create a lot of different conditions to wait. We can create the normal conditions to wait for something that is asynchronous. We can check fields. We can support atomic structures. We can ignore exceptions, because I know that we'll throw exception for some time, but when it's ready, it won't throw the exception. We can have integration with AssertJ. We can have a lot of things. How this works? Basically, what I have here, a piece of code where I will check for some restrictions, and all the time when I check for restrictions or you create a new object, I will have an event in the audit table. So I will emit an event, and that event will be there in the audit table. So it's an event, it's asynchronous. If I run this code, it will fail. Why? Because it will be there 2 milliseconds later, 10 milliseconds later, 1 second later. And that's why it's asynchronous. So that's why it will fail, because when we run tests, everything is synchronous. But with Awaitility, what I can do, one of the approaches when we are dealing with integration tests, API integration tests, we can create a method, any type, any name you need, but this method, the end of this example, should use this scalable, and you can use, of course, a Boolean or any other object. So I'm here is Boolean. So it's found or not, true or false. And I'm saying, okay, the scalable will return my repository dot a specific find method if it's present. So if I can find the CPF and it's present, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. And this scalable will be more or less a loop, an internal thread doing this. And the second trick is in the first white line of the code is await dot at most 10 seconds until event is found. So now I have the combination of my asynchronous methods to execute and see my repository if I have that information, and I'm telling to Awaitility, wait at most 10 seconds. So every second it will ping for seconds there, no, seconds there, no. Instead of failing my test, it will wait. Of course, if after 3 seconds I find the object, I will just stop. Awaitility will just stop doing this, and we go to the next part. Okay. If I reach the 10 seconds, the object's not there or the information is not there, I will throw an exception, of course. But I can control this, and it's better than use. Of course, it's a horrible practice using thread.sleep. So instead of using thread.sleep, that will sleep will stop the execution for that amount of seconds. I'm doing something more smarter. So I'm just pulling and checking till that specific time. Okay. So how I can show you just the example, and this will be a little bit different as well. I will open let me just close the idea, and I will idea credit, but I will show that kind of event sourcing, which is not an event sourcing, but it's a super silly example. So I have this event source, smart checkout, okay, go back, cool. So I will actually run this application first, and it has a database, an H2, just as examples. I know that I could use a lot of different tools, but I will go to here, password, and I have here the simulation, the restriction table, and this event star. And when I run, there is nothing. So if I create a post, the post will be logged in this event store. So I will go to my OpenAPI spec, the front-end part of it, and I will actually post an object. And after a few seconds, I will have that object in the table. So what I will do here, I will try it out. And I will use the same thing, and I will run it. And I can see it runs correctly. And I will start to run the query, and I can see no data. no data. Now I have data. So I made a post to some endpoint, and this event, it's getting, okay, it sent a post to that endpoint, store that information that was used. So the event ID, the main information, the date, and the type, okay? But you can see that it takes some time, right? And if I see the code of it, not the code, but the code itself, let me go to the presentation mode. And I have two different tests for that. Event test. So I have two. One is disabled and another is enabled. This one, which is enabled, it's actually waiting. Await at most 10 seconds for that information be there. And after that, it's doing something to just validate. These events found exactly like we have in the example in the slides. So I will just run this to show you that it works. I just need to stop my standalone application and run this. And it's running and it's waiting. You can see that it's just stopped, but it's not halt. It's doing something behind the scenes. And after 7 seconds, success, because it takes some time for my information, that event start table, to be logged, be recorded. What is the main thing? I'm creating a way to wait for it in a good way. I could remove the disabled, and this does exactly the same thing, but I'm not waiting here. So if I run the same test, but not waiting for it, of course, it will fail instantly because it's synchronous. It's just running the test and like in 100 milliseconds. So I can see that I'm running, okay, it's new because I'm trying to access some endpoints that has no information. I have the full stack trace here, but this is the main thing. So with Awaitility, you guys can use a proper tool to run it, and you guys can use a proper tool to create a piece of code to wait for synchronous things. And this can be used by anything, not only for APIs, for anything. If you guys are not testing APIs, we got testing, I don't know, front end or any other thing that you guys need to wait in any layer of your testing, you guys can use Awaitility for that. I'm just showing you how to do it with APIs, but it's the same way with any other type of testing. Okay. I don't see any more questions in the chat, and I will jump into the next part. And those two, I will explain those two because of the time. I won't run some code, but I'll explain how it works in general. And probably the last one, I will run some piece of code, okay? But here, Watermark. Probably you guys really know what Watermark is, and we have awesome guys working at Watermark. And basically, we can build mocks using Watermarks. And I know as good Java developers, you guys create mocks with Mockito or with Wiremock or with any tool. But if you guys are using Wiremock, probably you guys are doing like this example in this slide. You guys are using the Wiremock test annotation in your test, and you guys are mocking, stubbing it actually, the endpoint or anything you guys need to stub, and you guys are doing something, and you guys know what we need to return. So you guys know all the conditions, but as you guys don't control that endpoint or that third-party library or that anything, you guys are stubbing or mocking it through a Java code. It's super normal. Perfect. But in terms of APIs, let me see, let me tell you guys have like to play with a payments endpoint, which is a third-party one. I don't know, ADN or any other thing, and you guys needs to play with in your code, right? But not even you guys in your teams needs to play with it, but with all other different teams. How I can overcome this to remove duplications? you guys can use a service virtualization approach, which is a term in the markets to virtualize a service and normally a mock. So how we can do it, instead of creating this piece of code per team inside the unit test, we can use wire mock to create a project using Java or only JSON files to create that mock for me. And instead of distributing it as a library, I can create a container for that project, deploy in any Kubernetes infrastructure, any infrastructure, even locally, and all the teams can use a persistent mock running in your machine. And if I need more scenarios, more different mocks, more anything, anyone can add that there and can start running those things. And instead of having a lot of duplication per team, we have only one project running and everything concentrated there. And it's a super good approach to use. This would be the part I would show the code, but I will just skip it because of the time. But you guys will see here how to do everything, even a blog post with the super detailed explanation and how to do it in normally. And the last tool before we stop is a tool that I don't know if you guys know or not, but you guys should know for now and should use it. It's called PiTest, PIT. So this tool, it's basically a mutation testing tool. And actually it will mutate your code. What the PiTest does, it will try to detect some faults in your code base, try to change the code. If you have, for example, it's greater than something, this tool will try to change the greater than, greater than equals than, or less than, to see how your test will behave. Because based on your test, we can see the quality of the code you are creating. And based on that, PyTest will say, okay, I did change this and I have testing failing. And I shouldn't have any test failing. So it's a problem. So the coverage should be a little bit better in this area. And we have leaved mutations and killed mutations. Leaved mutations, it indicates that something is good. Killed, something is not good, and we need to change. Normally, PyTest does a lot of different ways to mutate the test, and some of the ways it changed the conditional boundary, equals, greater than, greater equals than, etc. Increments, plus, less, plus, plus, all the kinds of increments, mathematical formulas and calculations, and it's really good for it. And imagine that, like, for easy things like conditional boundary increments, we can like even think, and it's easy, I can implement. But when we have complex algorithms with some calculations on that, sometimes we spend a lot of time to create all the possible changes, and PyTest can help us doing these changes and showing, okay, you have a problem here, you have a problem there, you need to fix it. Cool. I would show you this, but this will be another time. And just to tell you some other tools you guys can use as well that I could not tell more about it, but it's really worth to take a look. Test containers. And at this point, I believe you guys should be using test containers, but if you guys are not using it, it's fine. It's really good to take a look on it. JUnit, which is a tool to create unit tests for your architecture. And it's really good when you have a lot of different teams and you need to apply the same architectural pattern in different teams. Data Faker, which is a tool that generates code, that generates data for you. So through code, you can say, give me a valid email, give me a full name, give me an IBAN from Germany, give me this thing. Data Faker will provide you in a super nice human way instead of using random string utils and or anything. And we do have as well Playwright, which open source tool from Microsoft to do front-end testing using Java, and this tool is really awesome. Cool. So guys, that's it. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to be really fast because it's difficult to cover 5 different tools like in this fast as this. But you guys can find me on any IT social network and have access to this talk. You guys have access this after the event for sure. And this scan me will redirect you to my public speaking profile, where you guys also can find this talk and the examples there. Cool. Thank you so much. If you have any other question, can reach me out as well later, and I will be super happy to answer you.